Good morning, everyone. My name is Kaustubh Phanse, and I currently serve as the VP of Product Design at AirTight Networks. And I've been at AirTight for over 6.5 years now. So when we talk about managed service providers, which, as you saw, is the theme of today's WFD6 presentation, it's all the way from large telcos, large services companies on the one end of the spectrum, with large set of customers that they may already be providing existing IT services, and they want to actually be able to have Wi-Fi as a part of their portfolio, right? And they probably have a large team or staff, and possibly in some cases they may also have their own data center or cloud infrastructure, right? But as you move along the spectrum to the other end, there you have your traditional, resellers, VARs, distributors that so far have been reselling or distributing Wi-Fi hardware, providing license-based features, and in some cases providing some value-add services like WLAN planning, site surveys, and so on. But with cloud Wi-Fi becoming mainstream, those resellers, distributors, and solution integrators now want to jump on to the managed service bandwagon, right? And many of them do not have any MSP experience, prior to this, or they do not necessarily have the staff or the cloud infrastructure to enable that for them. So the question is then, how does AirTight Cloud Wi-Fi, enable sort of managed service providers across that entire spectrum, from one end where you have these large telcos or large service companies, and all the way to the other end. So let's think about what does it take to deliver a viable cloud managed Wi-Fi solution to enable that entire spectrum of managed service providers, right? And it's one thing to be able to hang a bunch of APs off a data center and demonstrate cloud capability by showing that you can demonstrate ability to manage those APs remotely. But it's a completely different proposition to deliver a viable solution that can scale. So let me qualify what I mean by viable. So the way I see it, it really boils down to a solution that can sustain or succeed, or at least is capable of succeeding along 3 axes, right? The first axis, as Praveen and Devin introduced, are services. It's not just about adding Wi-Fi features. Going forward, it's also going to be valuable to customers how you are going to package those set of features into complete solutions, right? And those could be specifically targeted to a set of customers in terms of industry verticals, or depending on the way they have deployed their Wi-Fi in terms of having large-scale, distributed environments, right? The other set is really, or the axis is really the customers themselves, right? And when you talk about customers from a managed service provider perspective, yes, you obviously want to deliver a compelling, seamless end-user experience to the customer themselves. But also from an MSP perspective, you want to be able to manage your customers in a scalable manner, whether you have set of customers that have tens of thousands of distributed sites, or you have thousands of customers with small number of sites, right? So how do you scale across those different set of customers and their different requirements? And last but not the least, of course, you need to worry about your cost, right? Because if you want to be able to provide affordable service to your customers, and we have been talking to customers over the last 3 years of delivering Wi-Fi service, and one of the key priorities that they have on their list when they are evaluating Wi-Fi vendors is affordability, right? So if you have to deliver that affordability, you better be super efficient in your cloud backend, whether it comes to your hosting infrastructure, and more so when it comes to operationalizing that infrastructure for a large-scale distributed environment, right? So in the last wireless field day, I think those of you who were here, I'm sure you remember, Hemant presented and gave you an overview of where we are today, since 6 years ago when we first launched our cloud-based WIPS and compliance solution back in early 2008. And since then, we have obviously come a long way, signing up our first large cloud-based Wi-Fi customer in early 2011, and now this day where we have 6 globally distributed data centers with thousands of customers hanging off the AirTight cloud. And Hemant also gave you an overview of the technology that sits inside the data center that makes it all work together, right? But today, what I'm going to do is, again, coming back to these 3 axes that I talked about and let them, drive the rest of the presentation. So let's first focus on, the services axis, and let's see how do you, enable services to large-scale distributed environments, right? So with that, let me actually now jump into the product. So what I've done here is I've logged into one of our cloud servers. As you can see, it's called training.airtightnetworks.com. And I've logged in as a customer, right, called GBA Holdings, right? Now, so what you see here is a customer view of the whole console. And I want to bring your attention to this left panel, which Praveen briefly introduced in the first presentation, which we call a hierarchical location-based architecture, right, which is unique to AirTight. What this allows you to do is map your entire distributed Wi-Fi environment into a very manageable, logical form, right? Now you will notice that one way to manage that is in terms of the geography, right? You can group your networks by locations and manage them at a global level. Now you can go down the hierarchy to the next level, where you can actually logically group them by franchisee-owned or corporate-owned, or it could be branch offices, main offices, and so on, right? So I could have, going further down, again have another level of hierarchy with another set of groupings, right? On the other hand, let's say if I am a retail organization, I might be owning multiple brands. So I could also group my networks in terms of brands, right? And again, you can have the same kind of hierarchy below each brand. Now, this is not same as simply grouping networks, right? Because if you simply group networks, you still have a flat architecture based on SSIDs, right? This is about giving you a very flexible way to manage your network. So to give you an example, I can use this location-based architecture to define role-based administration at any level of this hierarchy. So I may have an administrator who is managing only one of my brands. So I give him privileges to only the location tree that appears below that location folder, right? Versus a super user who may be sitting in the headquarters and wants to have visibility into the entire deployment, right? Going beyond administration, if you want to actually manage, monitor, or do reporting on your network environment, you can do that again. So everything that you see on the console, whether it is the dashboard, the devices, the alerts, whether it's Wi-Fi, whether it's WIPS, all of that is in the context of this location hierarchy, right? And finally, as I said, you can also do reporting, whether it's PCI compliance, then you can run a report for your entire deployment. You can schedule that report, or you can have a report that is generated on smaller groups or sites, or again brands, right? So this again goes beyond just grouping networks and really provides you a lot of flexibility in terms of how you deploy your network, how you organize the information, and then manage it from a day-to-day basis. So this is a customer's view, right? So this is a single customer and still has a lot of flexibility in having what I like to call a presentation layer multi-tenancy within a customer, where I can separate out administration or management of different locations. Now, from a customer, let me now move into a managed service provider view. How does, on the same server, how would a managed service provider manage the customers? So again, as you will notice, I'm again logging into the same server. But what is different here? If you again pay attention to the left panel, what you see is not just one customer, but hundreds of customers that a managed service provider could manage from the same console, right? So this is actually a cloud server where we host all our POCs, evaluations, as well as our partners and so on. So that's what you see here. So these are not customers, but these are all live networks with Wi-Fi as well as VIPs below each of these locations, right? So now, if I want as a managed service provider to check out a particular customer, I can search, and again, the same customer view that I showed you on the other browser, I am able to actually go in and check out the same customer here very easily. And as soon as I click, you will notice that the entire dashboard and the entire context of the console, whether it's reporting, whether it's devices and all of that, as well as the policies, refreshes in that context. Now, the other thing, or the other way a managed service provider, you can imagine, can actually group these locations going up one level further is actually in terms of industry verticals, right? So one of the things that we have observed over the last 3 to 4 years, engaging with a lot of cloud Wi-Fi customers, and we started off with our focus on retail and the restaurant space, but now going beyond those verticals, getting into education, healthcare, distributed financial services, and so on. What we have noticed is there is a trend of certain ways in which specific verticals like to deploy their networks, right? So a managed service provider could potentially package their customers in terms of industry verticals, and you could then package their network configurations, including Wi-Fi, as well as with built-in firewall and as traffic shaping, quality of service, VIPs. All of that could be again packaged in terms of industry verticals, for example. So let's look at one example. Let's say I go into retail. Here I have just created a mock customer called AT Apparels, and if I go into configurations, let's look at how I would be able to easily get such a customer up and running without that customer ever having to go into the management console, right? So for those of you who were here, last wireless field day, I'm sure you remember, we presented the way we package our Wi-Fi feature set that sits on the AP in terms of a SSID profile. So let's say I click on one of the existing SSID profiles, right? So it has everything from your typical Wi-Fi security settings, whether you want to run the network as a bridge mode, NAT mode, set up your DNS, your DHCP, and then of course your firewall rules, right? So this is one example of if you have a customer that wants to offer guest Wi-Fi access, then there are certain, again, as I said, there are trends that emerge how most of those customers want to deploy guest Wi-Fi access. For instance, they want to keep guests, obviously, off their private network. Yes, question?
Question about the hierarchy of the different types of customers. Do you see any issue with your customers wanting to make sure that their data isn't on the same, is secured or protected from somebody else's data? And how do you handle, like if the financial, or like the SOX,
Sure.
all that kind of stuff?
Right,
how do you handle that?
Right. So from an architecture perspective, it is completely multi-tenant at the back end. Okay. So there is complete segregation when it comes to how the data is handled per customer, right? And also in terms of the compliances, different compliances, the data centers are obviously where SAS 70 certified, but now SAS 70 has been replaced by SSAE 16. So all of all the data centers, in fact, are protected with that as well. Okay. So yeah. So going beyond settings that you may want, these common trends that you may want to package. And then, by the way, those of you who were here again, last time you'll notice that since last time we have added SSID scheduling, right? So you can actually have the same schedule that you can add for every day of the week. You can have different schedules for a given day. Or in addition to this, you can actually also decide on a custom sort of calendar, so that if you want an SSID to show up only for a particular weekend, then you can do that as well, right?
Is that actually disabling the WLAN altogether, or is that just hiding the SSID?
Hiding the SSID.
Okay.
So this is only at a SSID level, right? And then, since this is a guest Wi-Fi access SSID, and I'm actually going to let Sean focus a lot more, because he's going to talk about guest Wi-Fi and what we are actually building in terms of guest management a little more. So, but as you can see, we have different ways in which you can host a captive portal inside an SSID profile. You can have a portal that is hosted on the AP versus in the cloud, and also you can define obviously things like the walled garden, as well as bandwidth shaping, login timeouts, and so on. Now, once you define a number of SSIDs that you want to run, so as you can see here, we have created almost like a set of SSIDs that, based on the customer feedback, that are meaningful for many of the customers, right? And they can obviously go in, customize, and quickly change the SSID profile if they want. But having a ready to sort of almost a get set ready set of profiles helps them to quickly set it up, even if they want to corner case customize it, rather than having to start completely from scratch. Now, once you have a set of SSID profiles, what it all comes together is what we call as a device template, right? So in a device template, you can actually define and map all your SSID settings to specific hardware, right? So in a given device setting, you can actually add any number of AP models from AirTight, right? So if you have a hybrid setup where you have few C75 APs, like maybe you are moving to 11AC, but then you also have your legacy deployment with some of the C60 or maybe an outdoor AP, you can actually define all those APs in a single template, right? Now,
so how does that single template get mapped back? I mean, is there unique features about each of the pieces of hardware so it knows how to map back?
Yes. So if I, let's say, select, for example, the C60 model, which is, let's say, a dual radio 11N, I can actually define specific properties for that particular AP. So let's say in this case, the C60 can run as a dedicated dual band VIP sensor on one radio, and can run as an access point either in 2.4 or 5 on the other. Or if I want to run access points on the both radio, I can do that. Have one running, let's say, 5 gigahertz, the other one 2.4. And then I can actually go and add whatever SSID profiles I want to run, right? So in a way, I'm now mapping those device-independent SSID profiles to a specific model. Now I can define this for all those models.
Oh, and then all of that gets collapsed up into a template.
Yes. Okay. So all of that is actually collapsed into one device template. Now the beauty is that once you have this template in place, I can go to a particular location. As I showed you, I could go to a specific customer as a managed service provider, or if I am a customer, I can go to a specific location or a branch office or a specific brand, and I can actually map that particular template as a default template for that location, right? So let's say in this case, I have AT Apparels and it has a bunch of locations. If I apply a template at AT Apparels, which is the top folder, all locations, whether they are 10 sites, whether there are tens of thousands of sites, will automatically inherit that configuration, right? So with a single click, you apply a template and it automatically inherits across all locations. Now, if you have a hybrid set of APs, as Keith mentioned, how do you collapse and how do you map all of that to different hardware? The nice thing about this architecture is that individual APs, right, when they dial into the cloud, and if they are placed into those specific location folders, they will pick the configuration that is relevant to their model. So it doesn't matter whether you have defined the configuration for all models in a template and you just start plugging different models, they will just pick what is relevant to them based on single radio, dual radio, and so on.
Is the MSP, you're saying that MSP is the next big thing, perhaps? So is everything driven, not everything, but I guess in terms of how you'd configure the management system, are you looking at it primarily from an MSP perspective, and do you see that as being the most significant portion of the customers, or what about customers that are
Sure.
just themselves, and maybe they do have 1,000 branch offices?
Correct.
but it's just there's not an MSP involved.
Correct. So the beauty of this architecture is that it caters to all those cases. So we do have extremely large retail customers with 10,000 plus sites in North America that have 3-4 different brands and have 1 or 2 IT staff per brand sitting in the headquarters and managing it on their own, right? So as I showed you initially, if we go back to my initial login, so if I'm logged in even as a customer, I can still take advantage of all the configuration that I showed you within my own context, not worrying about providing services, right? But the nice thing is that even as a managed service provider, I can actually apply the same sort of set of profiles and templates. I don't need to do anything else in the product. It actually easily maps to the managed service provider model as well.
And is there any allowance for, one of the biggest issues that I see is that out of the box, you need a significant amount of Wi-Fi knowledge to get a Wi-Fi network deployed. And so the whole speeds and feeds, most of that is wasted in most deployments that I see. So there's been a whole lot of work done by the IEEE and vendors, but unfortunately there just isn't enough knowledge. So you can have the latest AC access points or the latest 450 meg APs, and they haven't got a chance of getting close to their potential speed because the knowledge isn't there. So for me, I think what I'd like to see from vendors is to, I don't want to say dumb it down, but to make it easy. So when I pull a Netgear Soho router out of the box, and there's wizards to walk a home user through, that's the sort of thing I think is needed by enterprise vendors, and not to assume that everybody is a Wi-Fi expert. And so can walk you through and make some assumptions on the vendor side of things, basically make assumptions that to allow an optimization of the network.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I mean,
whether it's wizards or, for me, the big thing is just a single particular point, but having 1 megabit rates be the default out of the box, it doesn't matter that we all know that that's not a great idea in most deployments.
Right.
But most deployments I see, that's never changed. So that's a specific thing, and it's kind of my thing. But that's something I'd like to see from vendors.
Absolutely.
Make some assumptions. Yes, it's going to break some networks, and it's going to fix a huge number of others.
Correct.
So
I think the way we look at it is, going forward, we see a clear trend, and we are already seeing it, where more and more enterprises, not just those that are inherently distributed, but even typically those have been focusing on campus deployments, will start rolling out Wi-Fi that is widely distributed, right? Now, when you are in that situation, you have a lot of industry verticals where you do not have any IT staff at those distributed locations. You have, let's say, a store manager, a gym coach, or maybe a class teacher, right, managing those remote locations. So the primary focus of the way we have architected, and again, this is just evolving, so I'm sure you will see some changes coming in the future as well. But the whole idea of creating these pre-packaged templates and SSID profiles is one step forward, we believe, and we have sort of tested this out with our customers. And even I'll share a case study at the end where the customer has expressed what are their requirements, and as a managed service provider, you actually create these templates so that they don't even have to worry about it.
Are there any of those out of the box? I guess what I was getting at is wizards, and that's just an idea, but what you're saying, a pre-packaged template?
Yes.
Is there any out of the box that, if it wasn't an MSP, if it's an MSP, it's different because you've...
Absolutely. So
there, but if it's just a large customer and they still don't have a knowledgeable Wi-Fi person,
so
you
I
can
think
sort of pick an appropriate template.
So in fact, all the delegates that were here last time, we handed off, APs, and they went in and plugged it in. And, I'm sure they can, share their experiences of what it was. But the idea was, as soon as you plug in, it does have some out of the box. So the AP itself does not come with any configuration. But once you plug it in, it automatically discovers and dials into the management server, and it automatically gets configured from the cloud, right? So there are some default templates that we believe make sense in terms of what a typical secure Wi-Fi network might look like, what a typical guest Wi-Fi might look like, whether you want to add on services on top like social media, loyalty programs, all that can be absolutely done.
Okay.
Can you comment on integration with other managed service organizations, existing NMS platforms? If I'm an organization that resells managed services, and I go and I want to integrate the AirTight product portfolio into my offering, I have yet another pane of glass that I have to go to in order to manage, get stats up, down, throughput, all of the regular managed services dashboard type of stuff. In other solutions, you can, SNMP walk the cloud, for example, in order to get stats. And is that a similar approach that you're taking when you have to integrate with other NMS products?
Maybe I will answer it in two parts. One is something that we have done when an MSP actually doesn't have to worry about the cloud, right? So in a way, actually AirTight has delivered for the last 3 years, and before that 6 years even as a WIPS vendor, delivered services from its cloud. So in a way, we see ourselves as an MSP. So to truly understand what are the challenges of enabling MSPs, we said the best way is to start at home, right? So we have gone through some learning curves ourselves. So we see broadly MSPs into two categories. One is where you have MSPs that do not want to worry at all about the cloud infrastructure, almost like Amazon marketplace, right? I don't want to sell. Amazon takes care of shipping, warehousing, hardware. Don't care, right? So we do have that service available today, right? So if a reseller wants to just hop on, can get a view, a managed service provider view, and manage customers. Then there could be other set of service providers who may want a little more control, or maybe in some cases, as I said, large telcos or large service providers may have their own cloud infrastructure. And I will soon show you the kind of capabilities we have baked for ourselves. As I said, we have gone through a lot of pain, and over the last 6 years, we have created something that I'll share with you in a few minutes from that perspective. So along those lines, in fact, one of the things that I also want to show you, we talked so far about managing customers, but if I log out, I want to share with you today something that we are very, very excited about. This is something that we haven't launched yet, but wanted to give you a sneak preview and also get feedback. So what we have created is a single sign-on AirTight Cloud Services dashboard. Okay, so let me log in. So going beyond just your traditional WLAN management, right? If I want to now, as a managed service provider, want to package my services, right? It's almost like Google Apps, right? I have lots of Google Apps. I do through single sign-on, I get access to all my apps. No different, right? So here, our idea is to be able to package different types of services that AirTight may want to provide, our partners or managed service providers hanging off the AirTight cloud may want to provide, and we can actually provide that ecosystem for those service providers to start managing their services and apps. So to give you an example, the management console that I showed you, I just click. Now that I'm into the single sign-on dashboard, I click and it basically opens a new tab, and I'm back into the cloud console that I was there a couple of minutes ago, right? Then we also have an extensive guest management service, right? That Sean will talk about in a little more detail. But if I click, then it again spawns a separate tab and opens up the guest manager. Similarly, I have a way. So this is I'm going to let Sean talk about it. Where this is essentially a guest management platform where we handle analytics, different types of guest authentication mechanisms, and then map it beyond that to loyalty programs and so on. And then you also have what we call as a customer provisioning portal, right? Yes.
What's part of the guest engagement? What are you able to?
Right. So guest engagement. So as I see it, so currently can't show you the guest engagement today, but what we have baking is essentially given at least our initial focus over the last 3 years with hundreds of retail customers, and when I say retail, I'm using the term loosely, including hospitality, restaurant chains, and so on. We do see a specific requirement when they're offering guest Wi-Fi, free guest Wi-Fi. One thing they say is free Wi-Fi is great for our guests, but free Wi-Fi is not free for us.
Yes.
right? So how do I turn it into something that will allow me to engage with my guests? So that is where, whether it's social Wi-Fi that some of you have already experienced, but also going beyond that, integrating into third-party marketing systems, CRMs. So we have actually a web API that is available starting this release 6.8, which will allow you to actually integrate into third-party systems as well, whether it's couponing, email programs, and so on. So stay tuned is all I can say at this point.
Is there, sort of getting off this, is there a private cloud version available for customers? As opposed to the public cloud?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay, good question. So today, we have the public cloud, as I showed, 6 data centers, but you also have the ability, if you have, let's say, your own virtual infrastructure, then you can actually host the complete AirTight service onto a VMware.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's available now.
Yeah. I mean, it's been available for the last 3 years.
Right.
Yeah. Because, in fact, we do have a lot of customers, let's say in financial or DoD, government, and so on. They don't want obviously their data to go out. So, we in fact have, if you want a hardened appliance that you want to rack mount, we have that option. If you want VMware-based service, you have that as well as public cloud. So with that, going back to an earlier question, let me actually go back into my presentation. And talk a little bit about the customer provisioning portal, right? And this will address, the question about, is there a way for service providers to be able to, manage their own cloud and monitor, how it's doing and so on. So this is, again, as I said, something that we have never shown in the public domain, something that we have been using for the last 6 years, doing cloud operations. So really excited to, share some of what we have created with all of you. So, as an MSP ourselves, right, managing thousands of customers of the cloud, it obviously allows a way to scale to that number, whether it's 1,000, 10,000 customers. Now, for instance, this is a view that shows you how you can manage customers, monitor devices that are assigned to customers. Right? You can create all the nice things if you want to create a new customer, an user account, and so on. But obviously, if you are going to talk about creating thousands of customers, regardless, it's not going to scale. So what we have done is moving to the next tab, which is Salesforce. We have complete integration with Salesforce, which is the CRM that we are using, right? So with that, it suddenly now enables the kind of automation that you require, right? And again, I want to impress that it's been 6 years of learning as a service provider ourselves, and trying to reduce the amount of pain that the cloud operations team has to go. And today we have an level of automation where most of the work can be done through integration with Salesforce, where let's say you add a new customer, update a customer, you have the ability to automatically pull the customer, the assignment of access points, service modules into this particular dashboard. You also have, obviously, the ability to track renewals, right? So if you want, to make sure that you remind your customers that your subscription is up for renewal. If there is a corner case where a customer is what we call as out of sync, for example, because an AP was, for whatever reason, did not go through the workflow of, Salesforce, but was directly handed over, and the customer added it to the server, then we detect that AP has shown up on the server, but it is not part of the customer provisioning portal, and we can then update that as well. Going beyond customers, obviously, when you are running 6 data centers with hundreds of servers, you obviously want to be able to manage them centrally. So our cloud operations team is able to get a complete view of those resources as well, including data center monitoring, the servers that are sitting with automatic notification for upgrades, as well as if something goes wrong with a particular server or a link. Now that you have hundreds of thousands of APs or VIPs devices hanging off the cloud, if there is a corner case, which our cloud operations team always reminds me that it's not so corner, where a customer actually deletes inadvertently a device from their management console, and then they realize that, okay, I have this hardware, I can see the MAC address, but I don't see it in the console. So they get in touch, and then we realize that it's actually something that the customer did, and then that same AP can be reprovisioned by simply searching for the MAC address. So it allows you to search for any MAC address that is hanging off the AirTight cloud, right? Regardless of where it is sitting. And then going beyond, obviously, we do use some IT infrastructure monitoring tools through our APIs and pull a lot of information in terms of monitoring the data centers. And then obviously there are a lot of notifications that go out, right, directly to the cloud operations team as well from an operational perspective. Okay, so I hope that gave you an idea of from a managed service provider readiness perspective what AirTight can deliver, right? Whether it's the management console itself, being able to scale across a customer with thousands of sites, going to the managed service provider view that not only has customers with thousands of sites but has thousands of those customers, and then looking at the cloud backend where if a MSP decides to sort of really take this whole package from AirTight and put it in their own cloud infrastructure, then they should be able to quickly sort of deliver that from their data center. Yes.
Great stuff. Can you give us some numbers on how many MSPs are using it now? What's your largest? What's the scope of how this is being implemented today?
Yeah. I mean, we did announce several of our partnership with Earthlink being the most recent, but I can get back to you with the exact number. With the
Tens,
number of MSPs,
hundreds, thousands.
Yeah. So I would say the number of MSPs is in the tens, but the actual customers and devices are in thousands. I mean, devices are tens of thousands, but yes.
Can you talk about data retention from an analytics or from a statistics perspective? How far back in time can I go and I have an AP that's been up for a year and I want to know what my traffic stats were from 6 months ago and I want to look at a day's worth.
Sure.
Right. What kind of fidelity do we have in a look back?
Sure. So it also we try to be smart with how we handle data, because not every piece of data, it doesn't make sense to store everything for an year or more than that. There are some metrics that are meaningful for a week or for 3 months or 6 months, and then going beyond that. So I will actually, when Sean does the guest analytics demo, he will actually talk about some of the analytics, and in some of those cases, we actually do go all the way up to 1 year. And the same, and as far as the overall customer data is concerned, we obviously have daily backups happening, so that is more or less you can call it a persistent storage where we have several versions of or backups for a given customer.
But at some point, your stats, you start to slough off stale stats, if you will?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Right. But it, again, as I said, it depends on the metric. Yes.
What about, so you guys are a wireless and WIPS play. What about, managed service providers that are offering network as a service? You've got, I know you guys don't do switches, and I'm not going to fault you for that. I actually think it's a good thing. But as a managed service provider, chances are they may have to be managing switches, managing firewalls and other infrastructure, and not so much managing, but monitoring it. Do you guys integrate to third-party tools like Splunk or SolarWinds or some of the other network management platforms that?
So not directly with specifically those two tools today, but we do have on our roadmap some of the things that we are doing, specifically talking about going back to the cloud services dashboard, where I showed AirTight services, AirTight tools, and potentially given the web API, RESTful web API, you can imagine AirTight, our systems engineers like Sean, or even our partners or even customers creating their own apps and then get it registered under single sign-on, which also includes integration with partners. So in fact, you will hear some announcements where we are integrating with specifically technology companies that have cloud-based branch routers and switches that will also be part of the single sign-on, so that those common customers can actually access that. So before I wrap up, I just want to quickly share with you a customer case study. Somebody we signed up recently last year, where I hope it gives you an idea of how all of this comes together, right? Everything that we discussed so far. So the customer specifically here I'm going to present is IPC, right? And if some of you know, IPC is actually a co-op that manages all Subway franchises, right? So Subway, I think being 100% franchisee owned, it's really IPC that we interacted with. And IPC actually went out and did a survey, right, across all their franchisees and said, would you like to offer guest Wi-Fi? Because they started getting a lot of requests. And they sent out a survey and said, what are the or 5 key requirements that you want in that Wi-Fi access product, right? So those are some of the highlights that they have advertised on the left hand or on the right hand side of this page, which is actually a portal that we created for allowing franchisees to directly order AirTight Wi-Fi online, right? So when we started talking with IPC, they shared the information that what the type of Wi-Fi networks the franchisee were looking for. And going back to your question about making it simple and plug and play. So one of the requirements for those franchisees, in fact, many of those franchisee owners actually own 1, 2, or a handful of stores, right? And they have 0 IT staff, right? So then you are talking about the franchisee owner plugging the AP in their stores, not ever actually logging into the management console. How do you enable that, right? So that is where this whole idea of being able to pre-package templates that make sense to the customers. And then we started talking to many such customers, and that is where we said that this actually can be provided as a service to customers based on, let's say, industries. So in this particular case, as you can see, Amazon has this one-click, right, that they have, of course, patented. We would like to call this one-click Wi-Fi, right? You go to this portal, decide how many APs you want, depending on your number of stores. And by the way, given the success we have had with Subway so far, IPC was thrilled, and they actually recently added 2 more brands for which they wanted us to provide the same service. So this portal is now, Subway, Taco Del Mar, as well as Aroma Joe's, which I believe is a coffee chain in Northeast. So they basically, select the quantity and number of APs they want, authorize the order, depending on the number of sites, basically plug in the specific site ID. Here I have just filled in my own Subway shop, made up shop, and then once you order, you basically have PayPal integration where you can either use PayPal account or use just swipe your credit card, and then at the end you receive a confirmation, you receive an email confirmation. There's a bunch of emails that go out to the cloud operations team and the logistics team. After a few days, the franchisee owner receives a FedEx at the store, opens the box, takes the AP out, powers it up, and done. Never goes to the WLAN management console, plugs it in, has one secure Wi-Fi network for their employees or for their training, as well as some in-store applications, and then has one SSID that they want to offer guest Wi-Fi.
Sorry, this is something that's been set up specifically for IPC?
So this portal, actually today we are offering to IPC, but we have now obviously shown it to a lot of service providers that we are working with, as well as other, because when you have a large network of franchisee, you don't have the option to stage a network and then deliver those APs. So this is actually something that a lot of our customers are beginning to ask. So we don't be surprised if this goes beyond IPC.
Pay with PayPal?
At least everybody at Subway does.
Link to a P card. It's just a
really?
transaction.
Yeah, I mean it's not just with PayPal, right? You also have the option to just sign up with your credit card. Right? Yeah. So you can just do that. It's just that it's integrated with our PayPal, so right? So it just automates the whole process.
Now, is this through an API that, like, if me operating as an MSP, I can create my own version of this portal, or
Yes.
is this something that I need to fork over dollars to you guys to create this portal?
This can be delivered as a package to any service provider, the whole setup.